Hello, thank you for taking the time to hear about the Strong and Resilient Communities, Community Support, Small Grants for Volunteer Involving Organisations activity. You might hear this activity referred to as SARC. SARC is being delivered by the volunteering peak bodies in all Australian states and territories and is funded by the Department of Social Services. The objectives of these grants are to build volunteer management capability within organisations to uplift volunteer capability, including volunteer knowledge, skills and volunteer numbers, and to support alignment with the strategic objectives of the National Strategy for Volunteering and the National Standards for Volunteer Involvement in organisations that support the objective cohorts. The objective cohorts will be outlined in the following slide. The objective cohorts are young people 12 to 18 years who are disengaged or at risk of disengaging from education to reconnect with their community, school, training and/or employment. People with disability and/or mental health issues to participate in the community and work towards becoming or remaining independent and engaged in the economy and/or society. Women who experience or are at risk of experiencing isolation or discrimination to participate in the community and/or economy and increase their self-agency. And people who are unemployed to increase participation in their community and/or increase their capacity to engage in employment, training or existing employment services. To be eligible for these grants, your volunteer programs must support one or more of the objective cohorts. However, the objective of the grant is to build capability and capacity in your volunteer programs. The intended outcomes of the grant are to increase the capability and capacity for volunteer involving organisations to support increased social, civic and economic participation, reduced levels of social isolation or increased sense of belonging in communities, people to be self-reliant, empowered and experience an improved sense of well-being, people to be engaged in education, training and work-ready services and activities, people to improve work skills and have increased opportunities for paid work, people to engage with and sustain engagement with community services and activities, and people to improve connections and linkages to services that further support their increased social, civic and economic participation. Each volunteering peak body will administer its own grants process. Grants of between $10,000 to $20,000 are available for eligible volunteer involving organisations. There is a total pool of $200,000 available in the ACT, $500,000 available in New South Wales, $200,000 available in the Northern Territory, $500,000 available in Queensland, $300,000 available in South Australia, $200,000 available in Tasmania, $500,000 available in Victoria, and $300,000 available in Western Australia. In order to be eligible for the grants, your organisation must meet all eligibility criteria. These grants are for grassroots volunteer involving organisations that have an annual income under $500,000 or are an autonomous branch or subgroup of an organisation with an annual income greater than $500,000, but that branch or subgroup income is under $500,000. They must use a large proportion of volunteers, which means 40% or more of the total workforce should be volunteers. There must be a not-for-profit organisation, must deliver programs that support one or more of the objective cohorts, must have an Australian business number or ABN, or be willing to provide a statement by supplier form, and must have an account with an Australian financial institution. We'll have a brief look at the timeline of the grants process. It's It's important to note that grant activity will begin from the 29th of November 2024 and must be complete by the 30th of May 2025. You will need to ensure that your proposed activity can be delivered within this timeframe in order to be considered eligible. Expressions of interest will open at 9 a.m. local time on the 18th of September 2024 and close at 4 p.m. local time on the 4th of October 2024. Those expressions of interest will be reviewed and eligible organisations will be invited to submit a full application by the 14th of October 2024. Applications will be accepted until midday local time on the 28th of October 2024. All applicants will be notified whether their application was successful or not by the 25th of November 2024. The application process for this grant opportunity will be in 2 stages. First, organisations will complete an expression of interest form, which addresses eligibility and a brief overview of their planned activities. All expressions of interest will be reviewed against eligibility criteria and eligible activities, and all organisations that are eligible will be invited to submit a full application. Once invited, organisations will complete an application form that will request more detailed information about the organisation and the activity they plan to deliver. Applications will then be assessed by a selection panel in each state and territory. We encourage all applicants to read and understand all grant documentation before submitting an expression of interest or an application. This will be an important step in ensuring you understand your eligibility, eligible activities, and what elements a successful application might include. We're now going to have a look at how to complete the expression of interest form. Visit your local state or territory volunteering peak body's website to find your state-specific link, and I will list all websites at the end of this presentation. When you first open the expression of interest form, you'll see some information about the grant opportunity and the application process, as well as some privacy information. Please ensure you've read and understood all of this information before proceeding. Once you scroll down beyond the privacy information, you'll be asked for some identifying information about your organisation and the person completing the expression of interest. For the purposes of this demonstration, I've used the volunteering ACT information. Remember that this expression of interest must be endorsed by an authorised signatory for the organisation. That could be the Chief Executive Officer, President, Chairperson, Treasurer, or Secretary. And as you scroll further down, you'll be asked some questions relating to the eligibility criteria. These questions relate to your annual income, number of volunteers and paid employees, not-for-profit status, proposed project start and end dates, and the funds required. Remember that grant activity will begin from the 29th of November 2024 and must be complete by the 30th of May 2025. You'll need to ensure your proposed activity can be delivered within this time frame in order to be considered eligible. As you scroll down further, there are some more eligibility questions. Here you'll be asked about which of the objective cohorts your organisation supports. You need to tick all boxes that apply to indicate which of the cohorts your organisation supports. Next, you'll be asked for your ABN. If you cannot provide an ABN, you have the option to complete a statement by supplier form. If you need support to complete the statement by supplier form, you can contact the ATO for advice. You'll also need to include your bank account and child safety compliance information. All grant recipients will need to meet child safety compliance obligations in accordance with Section 2.4 of the Grant Opportunity Guidelines. If the services being delivered involve direct contact with children, then you'll need to complete a CB9 compliance form. If it is highly unlikely or there is a very remote chance of interaction with children, you will need to complete a G8A compliance form. And if you are successful in your application, you will be advised as to which of these forms you need to complete at that point. Now, if you have met the eligibility criteria in the form so far, you will see this message with a dialog box to include information about your activity or project that you plan to deliver. This should be between 150 to 500 words if it's in writing, or you can submit this with an audio or video recording, in which case you should insert the URL of the recording into this dialog box. And when you have finished, just press the submit button in the bottom right hand corner. Each volunteering peak body has further information about the SARC Small Grants activity on their website. You can see each of those websites listed here. On that website, you will find the Grant Opportunity Guidelines and supporting documentation, which includes all the information we've covered today, as well as further detail about the grant process. The Grant Opportunity Guidelines also include suggested eligible activities, which can be a great starting point to understand if your proposed activity is eligible. On the website, you can also find the question and answers document, which contains the answers to all questions that have been submitted to the volunteering peak bodies in relation to these grants. We'll go through some of the more frequently asked questions in the next couple of slides. Is it the volunteer organisation that is providing services to those cohorts, or the volunteer program that is providing opportunities for those cohorts to engage in volunteering that are eligible to apply? And the answer is both. Volunteer organisations providing services to the listed cohorts and organisations with volunteer programs that include volunteering opportunities for the listed cohorts are both eligible to apply. For organisations that fit all other eligibility criteria but are run nationally, to which state or territory should they apply? National organisations that are eligible to apply should apply to the volunteering peak body in the state or territory where the activity will take place. If the activity itself is taking place nationally, then the organisation should apply in the state or territory where their headquarters are located. Do I need to be a member of my local volunteering peak body to submit an expression of interest? The answer is no. Membership is not relevant to this grant program. You must meet the eligibility criteria as outlined in Section 2 of the Grant Opportunity Guidelines for applicants to submit an expression of interest. Will it be possible to be granted an extension of time to submit an expression of interest? And unfortunately, no, late expressions of interest will not be accepted. Expressions of interest will be closing at 4 p.m. local time on Friday the 4th of October 2024. We did go through this briefly as we went through the expression of interest form, but we have had a few questions about completing child safe compliance forms if the services being delivered do not involve contact with children. And yes, every grant recipient needs to complete a child safe compliance form. If the services being delivered involve direct contact with children or involve contact or interaction with children that is more than incidental to the activity, then you will need to complete a CB9 compliance form. If it is highly unlikely or there is a very remote chance of interaction with children, then you will need to complete a G8A compliance form. There are samples of both of these forms available on each Volunteering Peak Body's website, and if you are successful in your grant application, you will be advised as to which of these forms you need to complete at that stage. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about the Strong and Resilient Communities, Community Support, Small Grants for Volunteer Involving Organisations activity. We hope this video has been helpful in understanding the grants process, and we look forward to receiving your expressions of interest in the coming weeks. Please remember you can visit your local Volunteering Peak Body's website for further information and contact details should you have any specific inquiries that you would like to raise. Thank you.